I was approached a few months ago for a Fire Emblem commission, and one of the pieces was Leyren's medallion. I saw this as a chance to use my brother's new Formlab to have my 3D model be perfectly replicated. This project began in Illustrator. I vectored out the basic shapes based off of a few pieces of art that I could find. Then, into Fusion 360, since so much of the medallion is hard geometric shapes, the faces were done in ZBrush and then imported and combined with the rest of the model. I decided to play around with material rendering in Fusion, just to get an idea of what the final real product might look like. I was rewarded days later with this awesome print from my brother. The special thing about Formlab is that it's an SLA printer. It uses liquid resin. A laser passes through the material to build up the shape. This is great because unlike my ABS printer, the lines are almost non-existent and it can require almost no finishing before molding and casting. And here's the final piece. The detail is amazing, and I'm so happy to see my model so perfectly represented. These supports are from the printing process. You're supposed to tilt the print at an angle to minimize the suction between it and the resin surface. The big flat part is what connects to the plate that is raised and lowered into the resin. These supports hold it to the plate. The resolution is so good that you can see the file name on the edge. Now, with this being my first time working with an SLA print, I decided that I need some pliers, an X-Acto knife, and some cuticle scissors. And I just started trimming as close to the base as possible to limit the amount of sanding I'd have to do later on. After a while, I had trouble getting deeper into the support forest, and I had to start trimming at the top. With everything trimmed from the back, we're left with little nubs that I should be able to sand off later. And I'm left with an interesting mess. Pieces flew in literally all directions. I think some ended up on the table behind me too. To flatten the back for molding, I'm using my handy flat sanding tool. It's great for situations like this. After a few minutes, the back is nice and smooth. I then take some 200 grit and take care of the little bits that are on the side. Now, when it comes to molding, you can find materials all over your house to make mold walls. You can even take it from your kitten's current favorite toy. Cardboard works great as a mold wall. But don't worry, I gave him a replacement. And now we're ready to make a mold. The back is nice and flat. Sometimes I like to try out household containers for molds. Plastic cups work great for small items. This time, I wanted to try a Cool Whip container, but the bottom just wasn't flat enough. So back to the cardboard. I made a hoop out of it and hot glued it together, and I hot glued the medallion to some thick cardstock. I then marked on the paper where the medallion spikes were, so I might know where to cut them out of the silicone later. I also marked how high I needed to pour the silicone to make sure I covered it properly. I'm using Moldmax 14NV again. Still my favorite to use. It's a two-part that requires everything to be measured by weight. I use a simple kitchen scale from Walmart for that. As I mix them, I make sure to scrape the sides so that no material is unused. I then pour it all back into another cup to make sure all the material in the first cup is used too. This silicone is supposed to be less likely to form bubbles without the use of a vacuum chamber, hence the NV or no vacuum, but I still like to do a high pour. This stretches the stream out to pop bubbles that might be in it. Aim for the lowest part of the mold and just let the silicone do its thing. I check the outside to make sure that there are no leaks and everything looks good to go. You can see the bubbles rising, which means that it's curing properly. Several hours later, I check and it's ready to demold. Don't really need to worry about hurting the mold. Some of the silicone leaked under and will need to be trimmed, but that happens. Cuticle scissors are great for that though. And the marks I made earlier, I kind of forgot about them and had to guess where the spikes were so I could cut them out. Just a trim with the cuticle scissors gets rid of the flashing from underneath. And for the spikes, I just cut into the silicone. I decided to use a Quarry tone filler for this project. I've used the tan Quarry tone before for other projects, but I'm excited to try the blue one. Based on the art I saw of the medallion, it looked like it might be a carved stone of some sort, but I only learned much later that it's supposed to be a copper. My bad. I still think it looks good like this, so maybe in the future I'll do a cold casting with copper with a blue patina on it to make it canon. The resin I'll be using is Smoothcast 325. It's great for effects and gems. I mix it up in equal parts of A and B and an equal part of the Quarry tone as well, then mix them all together and pour them into the mold. I had an extra mold laying around that I could pour the excess into. It allowed me to test to see when the resin was fully cured and get an idea as to what the finish might be like when I finally pull it. Looks like I poured too much and it came out over the edge a bit. I'll have to sand this flat if this one works out. First test cast looks okay. There are too many bubbles for my liking, bubbly back, and the outer elements have too many air bubbles in them. Looks like the mixture might be too thick. I'm going to have to try less Quarry tone filler in the next test. Though there are less bubbles this time, but I'm still having troubles with the outer area. It took a couple more attempts, but I finally figured out that I had to pour a small amount into the sides and let it slide around, filling in the detailed bits as it went. Any additional air bubbles after fully cured could be filled with a toothpick and some extra resin. Since it's such a textured surface, it doesn't really mess with the appearance. Not quite done yet. To help those special details pop, I decided to weather it with a wash of Tamiya Black. I just dip the brush and move it around the surface, trying to get into all the little nooks and crannies. To remove the weathering and just keep it where I want it, I use 91% isopropyl alcohol and some Q-tips. But then later decided on a paper towel. I rub off what I don't want. The remaining paint helps everything pop. Thanks for watching!